My stepmother refused to share my inheritance after my father passed away. She said, "You have no right to it." My husband left it for me. When I threatened her with legal action, she locked me in a cage in the basement. What she didn't know was that I had a secret letter from my father. My name is Lily, and I am 27 years old. My life changed the day my father passed away. He was my rock, my guide, and my hero. When he was gone, I felt a huge hole in my heart, but little did I know that my world was about to crumble even more. After my father's funeral, my stepmother, Evelyn, called me into the living room. Her tone was cold, and her face was hard. She sat on the leather couch, clutching the papers that held my father's will. I had always known she wasn't fond of me, but I didn't expect what came next. "You have no right to this inheritance," she said sharply, waving the papers in front of me. "Your father left everything to me. It's mine now." I was stunned. My father had always promised me that he would leave his small fortune to me, his only child. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "That's not true," I replied. "Dad told me he left the inheritance for me. I have every right to it." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "You don't know what you're talking about. I was his wife, and everything belongs to me. You should just leave and forget about it." Her words stung, but I wasn't about to back down. "I'm going to look into this," I said, standing my ground. "If I find out you're lying, I'll take legal action." The moment those words left my mouth, Evelyn's expression changed. Her face twisted into a mix of anger and fear. "You'll regret this, Lily," she hissed. That night, I went to bed feeling uneasy. Something about Evelyn's reaction didn't sit right with me. I decided to reach out to my lawyer the next morning. But before I could, the unimaginable happened. I woke up in a dark, damp space. My head throbbed, and my wrists ached from the rough rope tied around them. Panic set in as I realized where I was, a cage in the basement of our house. The metal bars were cold and unyielding, and the only light came from a small window high above me. Evelyn's voice echoed from upstairs. "You wanted to fight me? Let's see how long you last down there." She laughed, her footsteps fading away. I felt helpless, but I refused to let her win. For 3 long days, I survived on the little water she threw at me and the occasional scraps of food. My mind raced with ways to escape. I screamed for help, hoping someone would hear me. Finally, on the 3rd day, a miracle happened. My neighbor, Mrs. Carter, came to check on me. She had heard my muffled cries and decided to investigate. When she found me locked in the cage, her eyes widened in shock. "Lily, what has she done to you?" she gasped. "Please call the police," I whispered, my voice hoarse from shouting. Mrs. Carter didn't waste a second. Within an hour, the police arrived, breaking me free and arresting Evelyn. I'll never forget the look on her face as they handcuffed her and led her away. It was a mix of fury and defeat. As I sat in the back of the ambulance, my thoughts shifted from survival to justice. I wasn't just going to let Evelyn's actions slide. I was determined to fight for what was rightfully mine. After my stepmother was taken away by the police, the house felt eerily silent. The basement where I had been imprisoned now stood as a haunting reminder of her cruelty. As I sat in the living room, still shaken, a firm resolve began to build within me. This was my father's home, his legacy, and no one was going to take it away from me. The following day, I met with my lawyer, Mr. Carter, who happened to be Mrs. Carter's son. He was sharp, compassionate, and eager to help. When I explained everything to him, he leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. "Lily," he said, "do you have any documentation or evidence that your father left the inheritance to you?" I thought hard for a moment. Then it hit me, a memory of my father writing a letter in his study, just weeks before he passed. "He left me a letter," I said. "He told me it was important, but I never thought much of it at the time." "Do you still have it?" Mr. Carter asked. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "It's in my old room." That evening, I returned to the house, determined to find the letter. The place felt different now, almost foreign without Evelyn's looming presence. My heart raced as I climbed the stairs to my room. I searched through drawers, boxes, and files until, finally, I found it, a sealed envelope with my name written in my father's familiar handwriting. Tears filled my eyes as I opened it. The words were clear and direct. To my dearest Lily, if you are reading this, it means I am no longer with you. I want you to know that everything I have built in my life was for you. My will leaves all of my assets, including the house, the savings, and my investments, in your name. I trust you to honor my legacy and use it wisely. Always remember I love you, Dad. The weight of his words brought me a sense of relief and sadness. This letter was my proof. Evelyn had lied to me, and now I had what I needed to fight back. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of court hearings and paperwork. Evelyn had hired a lawyer, but her case was weak. The police had already charged her with unlawful imprisonment, which didn't help her credibility. When I presented my father's letter to the judge, it was as if a veil of deception had been lifted. This letter, the judge said, holding it up, clearly states the late Mr. Dawson's intentions. The inheritance is rightfully Lily Dawson's. Evelyn's face turned pale as the courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge's gavel struck, solidifying the verdict. I had won. After the trial, Evelyn approached me. She looked tired, broken, and far from the intimidating figure she once was. Lily, she said quietly, I'm sorry for what I did. I was angry and scared. I didn't know how to handle losing him. Her words hung in the air. A part of me wanted to forgive her, to let go of the bitterness. But the scars of what she had done were too fresh. I can't forgive you, Evelyn, I said firmly. You didn't just try to take what was mine, you tried to break me. I need to move on. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. Without another word, she walked away. With the inheritance secured, I decided to leave the house and the memories of Evelyn behind. I moved to a new city, far away from the shadows of my past. I used part of my inheritance to start a small art gallery, something my father always encouraged me to pursue. For the first time in years, I felt free to live, free to dream, and free to build a life on my own terms. The pain Evelyn caused would always be a part of my story, but it no longer defined me. I had fought for my future and won. Moving to a new city felt like stepping onto a blank canvas. I chose a bustling, vibrant place with streets filled with life and endless opportunities. For the first time in years, I felt hopeful. The shadows of Evelyn and the painful memories of my captivity were behind me. Here, I could create something new, something that was truly mine. I rented a small apartment in the heart of the city. It wasn't anything fancy, but it was cozy and perfect for starting over. My father's inheritance allowed me to pursue my dream of opening an art gallery, something I had always talked about with him. He used to tell me, Lily, your art can make the world brighter. Never stop creating. Those words fueled me as I began turning my vision into reality. Opening a gallery wasn't easy. There were permits to secure, contractors to hire, and endless decisions about decor and layout. Every day was a whirlwind of activity, but I thrived on it. Each decision I made felt like a step toward honoring my father's legacy and proving to myself that I could stand on my own. I named the gallery Dawson's Light in memory of my father. The name reminded me of his unwavering support and love. When the grand opening day finally arrived, I felt a mix of pride and nervousness. Would people come? Would they appreciate the work I had poured my soul into? To my surprise, the gallery was packed. People admired the paintings, sculptures, and photographs I had curated from local artists. Some even bought pieces on the spot. As I stood there, greeting visitors and explaining the stories behind the artwork, I felt an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. One evening, after the gallery had closed, I stayed behind to tidy up. As I was locking the door, a man approached me. He was tall, with dark hair and a kind smile. "Excuse me," he said, holding out a hand. I wanted to introduce myself. "I'm Alex, the owner of the cafe down the street." "Hi, Alex," I replied, shaking his hand. "I'm Lily. I just opened this gallery." "I noticed," he said, glancing at the sign above the door. "Dawson's Light. Beautiful name. Your father must have been an incredible person." My chest tightened at his words, but I smiled. "He was. This gallery is my way of keeping his memory alive. Alex nodded thoughtfully. Well, welcome to the neighborhood. If you ever need a coffee break, the first cup's on me. His gesture was small but genuine, and it warmed my heart. After everything I had been through, meeting someone kind felt like a reminder that good people still existed. Running the gallery became more than just a business. It became a form of healing. I poured my emotions into the space, using it to share stories of resilience, hope, and transformation. Visitors often stayed to talk, sharing how certain pieces spoke to them or inspired them. One day, a woman named Sarah came in. She spent hours looking at a painting of a single flower blooming in a cracked sidewalk. When she finally spoke, her voice was shaky. "This piece reminds me of my own life," she said. "It's like beauty can grow, even in the toughest places." Her words resonated with me deeply. "It's true," I said. "Sometimes the hardest times make us stronger." As Sarah left, I realized that the gallery wasn't just helping me, it was helping others too. My father would have been proud. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I was finally free from Evelyn's grasp and the pain she had caused. While I couldn't forget what happened, I chose to focus on the future. I was building a life filled with purpose, creativity, and new connections. One evening, as I locked up the gallery, I stood on the sidewalk and looked up at the sign. Dawson's Light. The name glowed warmly in the night, just like the hope I felt inside. My father's legacy lived on, not just in the gallery, but in me. I smiled, knowing this was only the beginning of my journey. I was ready for whatever came next.